Okay, so think with your stomach first. Say, all right, I like shrimp. And that's a common one. Shrimp is the most consumed seafood in the United States.
Okay.
And then from there, kind of just build the layers of knowledge. So then, do I want wild caught shrimp or do I want farmed shrimp? If it's farmed, am I getting it from Thailand or am I getting it from, America, somewhere, a shrimp farm in Texas, say? And then from there, you can kind of continue to add the layers of, like, what do I think aligns with my values?
Hey guys, so today's episode is sponsored by Baja Gold Co. It's one of my personal favorite salts. And Baja Gold is the world's most flavorful sea salt with naturally lower sodium and industry-leading macro and trace minerals to support daily performance. Mamas, I can help you improve your family's health with my 5-week online course, Real Food, Real Families. It even has 5 weeks worth of meal plans. So check out nourishthelittles.com and use the code NTL10 for 10% off.
Welcome to Modern Ancestral Mamas. We are Corey and Christine, two millennial moms on a mission to bring ancestral wisdom to modern motherhood. Okay, guys, we're continuing our seafood series, which is called Fishing for the Truth, How to Source the Best Seafood. If you missed the previous episodes, make sure you go check them out. They are episodes 71 and 72. And today's guest is another Alaskan fisherman from an organization called Local Catch. Okay, but before we get started, we just want to remind everyone, please, the easiest way to support our show is to rate and review. So just pause real quick before you keep listening. Hit the 5-star review, hit the 5-star rating, leave us a review, comment, let us know. We want to know what you think about the fish series. We're really curious. Okay, one more note, housekeeping note. Today on the episode, it will just be Christine. Corey, unfortunately, was absent, and so you're only going to hear 2 voices. You will hear myself and our guest. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Kinsey Brown to Modern Ancestral Mamas. Welcome, Kinsey.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us all the way from Alaska virtually. Okay, so what time is it in Alaska right now?
It is 4 p.m.
Okay, all right. 7 p.m. in Texas, so not too bad for you. All right, Kinsey, we start off every episode with a roundtable question. Normally there's more of us to answer it, but today you and I will just answer it. And today's question is, what is your favorite seafood to eat and why?
My personal favorite seafood to eat is Alaskan sablefish. You might also know it as black cod, but it's a very oily and silky fish that is my favorite to eat because you really cannot mess it up when you're cooking. It's so delicious that all you have to do is put a little bit of salt and pepper on it and it's good to go.
Yeah, wow, that is a really good one. I learned about it for the first time 2 years ago, and I found this recipe where you basically poach it in brown butter. So like the whole fish is poached in brown butter, and my kids are obsessed with it. Like they can't get enough of it. But I will say the first time I cooked with it, I didn't realize that it had the massive pin bones down the middle. And so the first time I butchered it by trying to remove the pin bones raw and just like made a total mess of it. And then did a little bit more research and realized, wait, it's much easier to remove them when it's cooked. So then my second attempt at it went a lot better when it came to removing the pin bones. But yeah. Okay, so favorite seafood, because I wanted to specify seafood, not fish. I would actually say that probably my favorite seafood is crab, and I'll eat any type of crab, all the crab, the whole thing, with copious amounts of butter. That's definitely my favorite, personally.
Well, you would be right at home in Alaska then.
I know, right? The snow Alaskan king crab, is that what it's called? Or Alaskan, what's the name for it?
Well, we've got snow crab and tanner crab and then king crab as well.
Okay, I was combining 2 species. Okay, so Kinsey, can you give us a little bit of a background story about your history and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, so I actually didn't grow up in a fishing family. I grew up in the middle of the country in Colorado. And I always loved the ocean, wanted to be a marine biologist and work with fish. I had my first job in the seafood industry actually working at a grocery store fish counter in Colorado. And I just was in love with it. I think the diversity of seafood that I saw come across the counter seasonally was so interesting. The fact that, sometimes we would get shipments and it was from a particular boat or a particular person. And I was just so curious about the story behind that. So I moved to the West Coast to Washington State and did a little bit of recreation on the ocean there, being a kayak guide, and then eventually made it up to Alaska, working with fishing communities and Copper River salmon, which is a regional type of salmon sort of in the central area of Alaska. And that was more than 10 years ago now. So I've had a lot of experience at this point in different parts of the seafood industry. I've worked with fishermen, as a fisherman, both in research, nonprofit, selling fish, and currently I am a researcher. I do research with community resiliency on the coasts here in Alaska. And then on the shoulder seasons, I help my husband run our commercial fishing boat. And we harvest salmon, crab, shrimp, halibut, and sablefish.
Wow. And do you ship to the mainland?
We do, yes. We sell a lot of our catch directly to a processing facility, but sometimes we can direct market our fish, is what that is called when you buy directly from a fisherman.
Okay, right. We were chatting a little bit before we started recording and mentioned Schoolhouse Fish, which is the previous episode to you. And okay, so that's good to know. They are direct to marketing fish. That's what they do. And so tell me a little bit about local catch and how you got involved with it and what is local catch? What is their mission? Give us a little background on that.
Yeah, that's a great lead in actually, because local catch it's a community of small boat harvesters across the nation who either sell their catch directly or they want to work towards ways in which consumers can have better connection to small boat fishermen. So it's really about building not just a community of informed consumers, but also a community of fishermen and seafood harvesters who have a really strong connection to place and are being stewards of the ocean that they live and work near.
Okay. So local catch basically encompasses a whole bunch of different fishermen and like brings them together and connects them to consumers in a way, would you say?
Local Catch does have a Find Your Catch locator tool on their website, so you can search members of the community. And we don't pay to be a part of Local Catch. This is just an awesome tool that they have created to help connect those folks. So you can source seafood directly from fishermen on Local Catch and get connected with them. But on the fisherman side of things, it's also a place where we can learn about different quality handling techniques, different small grants maybe, so that we can try out new products and also take courses about how to safely handle seafood on the processing side. So it's very educational, I think, both for consumers and for the harvester.
That's really interesting. Do they have any benchmarks for the fishermen that you have to meet to be a part of the organization? Or how does that work?
No, so it's a community of shared values.
Okay.
So Local Catch you're not purchasing the fish through Local Catch.
Right.
It's more of a directory.
Okay. Got it. So I'm equating it to here in the States, there is a website, or I guess a search engine called Farm Match, where it connects. It's similar to that. You put in your zip code and it connects farmers to consumers. And all of these farmers have similar values as far as how they raise their animals and how they harvest them and things like that. So would you say it's similar to that?
Absolutely. And as far as being part of the network, when I have listed our boat and our business on the directory, I'm just agreeing to those kind of core values of being a community-based fisherman who is harvesting wild seafood and wants to do better for my local community and for the food community.
Okay, interesting. Wow, that's great. So, where are you based in Alaska? Where do you fish out of?
I live in Cordova, Alaska, which is a small town of a little bit less than 3,000 people, right in the middle of the southern coast.
Okay. How far away is that from, let's say, St. Petersburg?
So, yeah, Petersburg is in southeast Alaska, that little tail that hangs down close to Canada.
Okay.
And Cordova is located on the Gulf of Alaska.
Okay, got it. Okay. So let's pretend that we have somebody who knows nothing about fish and they're not very sure about all of the labeling, because nowadays there's so many different labels when it comes to fish, and you walk into the grocery store and you have wild caught and farm raised, and then I'm trying to think some of the others. There's like fish caught by fish and line, or hook and line caught by, there's just, I feel like it is a long list of different labels. And what can you tell us about those labels, and what should we be looking for as consumers?
So the label is primarily telling you where the product was geographically located, usually, and then secondarily the harvest method. So wild caught or farm raised, that is a different type of harvest method, as is pole and line. The reason that pole and line gets sort of flagged all the time is that it is considered a sustainable, low impact method. So people like to put that on their labels to advertise that they're being gentle on other species. They're not getting bycatch, things like that. Honestly, it really takes a little bit of groundwork on your own to understand what these different terms mean. Just because something is wild harvested does not mean that it's automatically sustainable, and vice versa with farmed. You're going to have to go a little bit deeper than that. Oftentimes, the fishmonger or whoever is behind the counter where you buy your fish can help answer some of those questions. But I always like to suggest that if people are brand new to seafood and they want to start eating seafood for its health benefits and taste while also supporting something that's sustainable and good for the environment, start with one seafood. Start with one fish that you actually want to enjoy, that you enjoy the taste of. Okay, so think with your stomach first. Say, all right, I like shrimp. And that's a common one. Shrimp is the most consumed seafood in the United States.
Okay.
And then from there, kind of just build the layers of knowledge. So then, do I want wild caught shrimp or do I want farmed shrimp? If it's farmed, am I getting it from Thailand or am I getting it from, America, somewhere, a shrimp farm in Texas, say? And then from there, you can kind of continue to add the layers of, like, what do I think aligns with my values? Do I want to support someone closer to me, for example? So you live in Texas, maybe you do want to buy farmed Texan shrimp as opposed to like wild caught Alaska shrimp, because you're using the value of local, right? That's local to you. Maybe it's more important for you that the shrimp came from like these pristine glacial waters, and then you would buy wild Alaska shrimp. So I think just that's the best advice that I have, is to start with the food that you want to eat and then add the layers of knowledge on top of it, all the way up to your value system.
Wow, I love the way you broke that down. That was amazing. So what I'm hearing you say is, first of all, it's a very nuanced conversation, as most things are in life, and there's a lot of different layers to it. And it's not just as simple as, like, as you said, wild caught or farmed, because there can be farmed close to where we live, or there can or you are choosing to purchase wild caught, which is super far away. So then think about your values, what matters to you, and choose based on your values and the fish that you like, that you want to actually eat. So that's really, really good advice. You mentioned something about sustainability. Can you go a little bit into that? Talk about, what do you mean by sustainability when it comes to fishing in the ocean?
So I'm going to speak from an Alaskan perspective because that's what I know most intimately. And Alaska is one of those like immediate green flags. If you see wild caught Alaska on a product, you can be very confident that it was harvested sustainably. And that is because it is written into our constitution. It is written into the state constitution.
Wow.
Our state fisheries are managed by the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. And they really put numbers to it, right? They have a equation about sustainability and something that we call the maximum sustainable yield. So that is, what can we harvest from the ocean and from the coasts while still allowing for an abundant wild population? A lot of this comes down to salmon. Salmon is one of the most easy fish to describe its sustainability system. So this is just an example of how biologists manage for salmon. So salmon are a fish that live their lives in the ocean, and then they go upriver to spawn, lay their eggs, and create the next generation, and then they'll go back to live their adult lives in the ocean again. And in this cycle, there's opportunity for biologists to actually count how many salmon are going up the river. So on the Cop River, for example, we've got a sonar station upriver, and that counts individual fish. There's someone there counting every single fish that goes by, and that number gets reported to the office at Fish and Game. It's an amazing system. And that number is then compounded with like how much has the commercial fleet caught that day? And is that going to even out in the end? Like, is that enough fish in the spawning grounds to make sure that we have a fishery the next year, right? I think this is a system that everyone in Alaska is really proud of, our sustainable fisheries, the fact that they are managed by biology, by scientists. Nobody wants to catch the less fish. So we are all very invested into sustainability as wild harvesters.
Wow. And does the sustainability aspect, does anything about ocean pollution, or does that go into sustainability at all, or is that a completely separate conversation?
I think that's a separate conversation. That's more of a like FDA, NOAA fisheries, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They do test for these things. They test for contaminants and pollutants in seafood that is being marketed across America. So once again, I want to be clear that this is for domestic wild-caught seafood. We have a lot of standards in place that are pretty high for things like radiation or mercury. The levels have to be extremely low or non-existent in order for that fish to be considered safe to be consumed. Another way that you can think about this with seafood, though, is one, the Pacific is huge, huge. And a lot of times the solution to pollution is dilution. Mm-hmm. So maybe something has gone wrong, say like people always want to talk about Fukushima in Japan. That is so far away and in such a different scale than what like an Alaskan salmon is experiencing in its life, that it's really the benefits that you're going to get from eating wild seafood far outweigh any potential negative impacts from contaminants.
Okay. Are the ocean cruise liners in Alaska a problem at all?
In terms of pollution?
Yeah. Would you say that the cruise liners, in your opinion, do they cause any problems as far as pollution?
I probably don't know enough to answer that question. It's something I haven't really considered because there's not large cruise ships in my area.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. We're talking about, direct to consumer, sustainability. Here on the mainland, one of the biggest conversations when it comes to agriculture is regenerative agriculture sustainable to feed everybody in the US? So I'm going to ask a similar question, but in relation to seafood, would you say that the seafood in Alaska is enough to feed everybody in the US? And maybe it's not all of the seafood in Alaska, but at the rate that we're going, with all of the sushi restaurants popping up on every single corner, and how popular seafood is, what are your thoughts on whether we can continue at this rate?
I truly believe that American seafood can feed America. Alaska is just one place, but we have really productive fisheries all over the United States. I mean, when you think about like Maine lobster, Gulf Coast shrimp, tuna off of Oregon and California, we export a lot of our fish. And if we kind of, as consumers, care about eating seafood more and sourcing it locally from the United States, domestically, definitely we can feed America with American seafood. Another piece to this is we need to be more comfortable as consumers eating fish that we haven't heard as much about. Everybody knows salmon and everybody knows tuna, but like black cod, that's something that a lot of folks outside of the coasts are new to. Rockfish, these smaller fish that don't get as much attention. Maybe they're not as big and they're as flashy, but it's really cool to see chefs across the nation getting excited about sort of these smaller, like uglier fish because they are still a great source of protein and super delicious.
Okay, so you named sablefish, and you also known as black cod, and you named rockfish, which I did have rockfish last year when I ordered it. I thought it was shrimp. It kind of like looked like shrimp to me. But maybe I'm confusing it. What are some other what are some other types of seafood that are not as well known?
Some lesser known seafoods that I think people can explore that are interesting are things like monkfish. Monkfish is a very hideous looking fish. It has a very ugly face, but it is absolutely delectable. Another thing to think about is like sole. Perhaps you've heard of these things like skate.
I have heard of sole, and I had heard of skate.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be
Are they whiter fish?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
these are types of white fish. Yeah, if you're interested in exploring kind of lesser known seafoods, lesser known fish, just go to a fish market, and you can totally speak with that person behind the counter because odds are they are a fish nerd. They're a seafood nerd and they have their favorite thing, right? It's like asking the butcher for what cut they would recommend. And so going to a good, like a well-stocked seafood counter, and sometimes that's at a farmer's market, and asking like, what's in season, or what would you recommend, or what's something that people don't buy that you think that they should? I would be curious to see what people say.
Yeah. Along those veins of lesser known seafood, can you talk a little bit about how you recommend using the whole fish?
I think it's definitely important to use the whole fish. If you are indeed buying a whole fish, depending on what species of fish it is, there's ways to prepare it to use like maximum utilization of the fish. Something like a rockfish or a snapper, something that's very bony like that, you probably shouldn't be filleting it. you're going to lose a lot of meat on the body. For a fish like that, I would recommend it's probably gutted already, but scoring the skin, and like stuffing citruses and herbs inside the belly cavity and on the skin, and just eating it whole like that, like baked whole and flaked. And that's how they do it in the Mediterranean, right? That's like a classic prep. If you're going to buy a whole fish and fillet it, don't forget to scrape the meat off of the ribs. We call this the frame. So that backbone and the ribs, there's a little bit of meat there. Whenever I fillet my salmon in the summertime, I save all the ribs and I scrape them and I make salmon patties or salmon meatballs with that sort of scrape. Another great thing you can do, especially with a larger fish like a salmon or a tuna, is to save the heads. And you can make a very flavorful and super nutritious broth. I do warn you, it smells a little fishy. So if you can open a window and simmer that for a while. But man, it just makes the most delicious noodle soup with fish head broth.
When you do that, are the eyes still on the fish, or do they take the eyes off?
No, it should be the whole head.
Okay. Out of curiosity, have you ever tried eating the eyeballs? I know that that's very popular in Asian cultures.
I have had a fish eye in soup, yes. I would say it is a texture that the Western palate is not used to.
Okay, interesting. And what about the tails? I actually have a package. I think it's almost like 3 pounds, and it's literally a whole bunch of salmon tails. And there's some meat on there. Any suggestions for that?
Yeah, so when I worked at a processing facility, a lot of things get trimmed, right? And that's called tips and tails. And all those little pieces, if you have the ability to smoke the fish, like some people have like the little chief smoker on their patio, something like that, definitely try that. Personally, I like to just mix a bunch of those tips in a marinade and then roast them and kind of like eat them like chicken wings.
Oh, interesting. That never occurred to me. Okay. Yeah. Because there's still a lot of meat on there. And, I don't want to waste it. What would you say, what about like the inside of the fish if it hasn't been gutted, or like the roe, for example?
So very rarely as a consumer will you be buying a non-gutted fish.
Okay.
The reason for this is because seafood spoils at a much faster rate than other proteins do, right? It's made to be in the water. And as soon as you take it out of the water, there's like a loss of freshness that begins.
Yeah.
So you can definitely enjoy the inner parts of a fish. They're just probably going to be sold separately. And I totally recommend eating roe. I mean, it is so delicious and it is so good for you. I always say that my number one skincare routine is just eating salmon roe for breakfast on toast.
And how do you like to prepare it? Okay, so you say you put it on toast. Do you add anything to it, or any garnishes, or is there anything special that you like to do with it?
Well, if anyone's listening who is a real foodie and a real confident home cook, and you can get like a skein of roe is what that's called when it's still all together in like its sack from the fish, you can brine it at home. And that's just a simple salt and water mixture. And I like to brine my roe with a few coins of fresh ginger. And I find that really comes through in the final flavor of it. But more likely, you're going to be buying like already prepared and already cured roe. Once again, cured just meaning that it's been treated with some sort of salt. I like to put it on top of cream cheese with chives, like just like you would do lox or smoked salmon. It's got the same flavor profile, right? Like ocean fresh and salty. So you want to pair it with something creamy and cool, like a goat cheese or cream cheese.
Okay. And so when you say it's been cured, are you talking about if I were to get like the little glass jar of it, that's already been cured? Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yes, that's
So,
already been completely prepared. You can eat that in the jar.
okay. And I'm guessing, like you mentioned earlier, because seafood spoils so quickly, in order to preserve it, that's why they cure it.
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
Hey, mamas, do you want to add a new secret ingredient to your kitchen? Are you ready for this? Give Baja Gold sea salt a try today. We know our food is lacking minerals because of the depleted soil, so increase your mineral content of your food by using Baja Gold sea salt.
Baja Gold is an all natural, unrefined sea salt from the Sea of Cortez. This salt is made the way it used to be, sun dried with all of the ocean's minerals intact. No processing, no chemical flowing agents, nothing but pure, unrefined mineral salt.
And because of how and where they make their salt, Baja Gold is naturally lower in sodium and higher in minerals like magnesium and potassium. Moms, did you know that magnesium is a mineral used in over 300 bodily processes? Yeah, I know. We all know it is helpful for relaxing little bodies before bedtime.
Give Baja Gold a try today. Visit BajaGoldSaltCo.com to learn more. Check the show notes for the link and use the code MAM10 for 10% off.
That is MAM10 for 10% off. Hey guys, 2025 is the year for you to take control of your family's health. The first step is getting in the kitchen and cleaning out your pantry and fridge. Get rid of all of the processed crap. I can help you with my Real Food, Real Families online course. In just 5 weeks, I will walk you through all of the steps so you can start creating healthy, delicious meals for your family on a regular basis.
Go to nourishthelittlescom and click on the drop-down menu labeled Courses. Then click on Real Food, Real Families, and we're going to put a link in the show notes for you to use. Then use that code MAM10, that's MAM 10 for 10% off this course.
What do you say to the person who says, but I can't afford to buy that Alaskan fish? Like, I can't afford the price tag on your product, because it's so high quality.
Yeah, I think that there is a wild seafood for every single budget. And I say this as a person who grew up without a lot and still enjoyed salmon patties for dinner. And the way that we did that was canned pink salmon. My husband and I, that's one of the fish that we harvest here in our region, Prince William Sound, is wild Alaskan pink salmon, and the majority of it goes in cans. It is just as good for you. It is just as delicious. I think that, we're not used to seeing something in a can and thinking, oh, so healthy, so delicious. But we really have to change our mindset when it comes to fish in cans. Like I'm saying, with the rapid spoilage rates of seafood, canned fish and frozen fish is often like going to be much more flavorful and fresher than something that's been shipped fresh and been sitting out in a case.
Yeah, that's a really good point. When I go to the grocery store and I'll look at the little tags at the seafood counter and it will say fresh, previously frozen. And it's just like, wow, this traveled a really long way to get here and was obviously, had to be flash frozen. And then they defrosted it to have it sit there in the case looking all pretty for you. And then you buy it. And yeah, it's been a long time,
Absolutely.
I imagine, before it finally reaches your plate.
Yeah, this is a big thing that a lot of small boat fishermen are advocating for more and more, is that we want people to understand that frozen wild seafood is not only delicious and fresh, because sometimes it's frozen at sea or within literal hours of being harvested, but it's also a way to enjoy a sustainably caught seasonal fish all year long. I as a fisherman, I'm constantly eating frozen fish, you know? And I think that we have to like understand that that's not any less luxurious. It's not any less healthy. Fish that has been frozen is just as good. Fish in a can also be elevated. When I do sushi nights at home, you can just take smoked canned salmon, mix it up with cream cheese, just like you would making a dip, and then put that in your little sushi roll, and it's like a California roll. And it's easy to make, super delicious.
I'm a huge advocate for canned fish. We eat it in our house all the time. My kids are obsessed with it. And honestly, I find it to be one of the quickest, easiest meals like ever. Literally this week, we were heading out on like a museum tour or something with our homeschool co-op. And I was running late, and the easiest thing was literally to just grab some cans of fish and plop it in the lunchbox and be like, all right, you've got your protein, add a few veggies, some fruit, you're good to go.
I love to hear that. I love that.
Yeah. And actually, I need to consume more canned salmon. I feel like I don't do enough canned salmon because, you know, as I mentioned before, we have the fresh salmon from our Alaskan fishermen. And so I tend to lean more towards mackerel and sardines and anchovies and trout and things like that for canned fish. But I'll have to pull out make sure to eat some salmon as well. What do you say about the landlocked states? You know, what should anybody who's in a landlocked state, what are some of your recommendations for them when it comes to accessing seafood?
Yeah, you're really asking the right person because, like I said, I grew up in Colorado. And so my parents are, you know, constantly calling me for seafood advice about what they should eat. And, you know, to that, just once again, I would say like find frozen fish, find canned fish. And if you really want to source fish in season that is going to be fresh and comes from a great source, reach out to a fisherman. We know how to get fish places within 24 hours. I mean, the shipping system is so sophisticated these days. So a fish can be fresh caught and sent on a jet plane to like New York City or Denver, Colorado within 48 hours.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible.
I had some friends, I think she still does this, but oftentimes when she wants oysters, she will buy them in bulk and overnight them and get like 50 oysters overnighted to her house, and then just gorge on oysters for the next day, you know, have a party or whatever and have everybody come over and shuck oysters and gorge on them. So yeah, no, you're right. That's okay.
I think that's a great point, is like getting together with friends to source fish is a great idea, like buying in bulk. I think that can be really intimidating when it comes to seafood because it is, you know, it can go bad so quickly, but it's a cool way to build community and party with your friends, is like get some people together and say, let's all get together, let's all pitch in and get a $200 box of fish. And then we can, you know, enjoy it together and then each bring some home at the end.
Okay. So tell me a little bit more about your particular fishing boat and what you fish and describe it a little bit for the listener.
So we have a 58-foot long boat called a seiner, and that's a gear type. And what I mean by that is the gear that we use to harvest the fish is a seine net, and we harvest wild pink salmon in Prince William Sound. If you have ever had canned pink salmon, the chances are very high that you have had Prince William Sound pink salmon. And the way that this net and fishery works is basically each summer when the fish return to the coastlines and they're milling about, they're getting ready to go upriver and spawn. So they are ready to end their life cycle. And while they're in the ocean, they are the fattest and the most energy filled that they've ever been, right? Because they're getting ready to go reproduce. So right before they enter the river system, Alaska Department of Fish and Game basically creates an open period, an opportunity during a set number of hours and days during the summertime in which fishermen can go out and harvest the fish. And fisheries are all limited in different ways. Some are limited by the amount of poundage you can catch or quota, and some are limited in the space, like only this area GPS points is open to the fishery. Others are limited by time, right? So there's only these many days that you can go out and fish. And the salmon fishery is limited by time and space. So we will go to where it's open. We set our net using a smaller boat called a skiff. It takes the end of the net and it loops them in a circle around a school of fish. And then that skiff attaches to our big boat, hands off the net. And then we slowly start cinching it up on the bottom. And so it's going to create a bag full of fish. And then what we'll do is slowly start cinching up the top. And that's why it's called a purse seine, is it really does cinch up just like a little coin purse. And once it's all closed up, the mechanical arm on the boat is going to lift it all up and drop it on the deck and go straight into our fish hold. The fish hold is full of refrigerated seawater, and the fish go directly into that super cold seawater. And we continue doing that until we have a full fish hold or until the period closes. And then we go deliver it to a larger boat or to a processing facility that would have also contracted the larger boat. And those fish get processed and sent all over the world.
About how many fish approximately is that per day? Or I should say per fishing period.
I couldn't say exactly the number of individual fish, but our boat, for example, holds about 100,000 pounds of fish.
Whoa, okay.
At max capacity.
Yeah.
We have only filled it up like once like that. So that's pretty rare. But when you think about it like that, it's actually amazing, you know, that so many families have boats just like we do, and they're going out and fishing, and we are catching that much fish, and that there's still enough to come back year after year. So, you know, to your earlier question, like, is there enough seafood to feed America? Yes, absolutely there is. Absolutely there is.
Yeah, it's kind of hard for me to wrap my head around that and picture the fact that there's, you know, I can't even imagine how many boats there are out there fishing, and they're catching these massive amounts of fish every single time. And like you said, there are still fish in the ocean. I mean, you know, they're literally counting them, as you mentioned earlier. So, what an incredible ecosystem. And you also said you catch crab, right?
We do harvest crab. So, you know, Alaskan crab is very iconic. And we're harvesting that with pots. The pots have bait in them. And we set the pots out. They've got a buoy on the end of a very long line that floats at the surface. So the pots may be anywhere from like 300 or more feet down. And then the buoy is at the surface telling us where that pot is. And we will let it sit there for, you know, kind of depends, like a day, 2 days, let the crab come in. The way that we make sure we're not catching too much crab or too small of crab is there's a little escape ring. And this is on lobster pots as well. There's a escape hole that is the size of small crab. Right. So they have to be big enough to get trapped. We don't want to catch the little ones. And we also only keep the male crab. That's another way that fishery is kept sustainable, is that the females who are producing eggs, no one keeps them. We throw them all back.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Okay. And I'm literally picturing like a big kitchen pot.
Oh, no, my apologies for not describing that all the way. So, it's more of like they can be shaped like a square or like a cone, but it's got a metal sort of skeleton. And then there is
Oh, yeah. Okay.
a net that goes over that frame. Yeah.
Okay, when you said pot, I was like, oh, interesting. But now, now that you're describing it, I think I know what you're talking about.
You'll have to forgive me because there's all this like fisherman lingo.
Oh, no worries. I get it. That's really interesting. And so, do you spend all day eating fish? Like, is that just your main source of protein all the time?
For my family, definitely. We probably eat fish for dinner 5 nights a week. And I often am using leftover fish for lunch.
Yeah.
I don't even think about the frequency. It's just a part of my lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you mind sharing real quick what are some ways that you cook it? Since, I mean, 5 nights a week is quite a bit. So, what are all the different ways you make fish?
I'll try to think of some of my more interesting ways because I think everybody knows that you can just put like capers and lemons and bam, that's good. But if you want to get creative, just think about substituting fish in lieu of other proteins and see what happens. I have a pretty incredible enchilada recipe that uses salmon. And you'll be surprised. I also like to take canned salmon and put it in chowder with like coconut milk and cilantro, and it sort of has a nice like Asian flavor profile to it. That's a great way to use canned fish. If I have leftover salmon, I like to mix it up with mayonnaise and furikake and then take sushi rice and basically just press it around a ball of that fish and make a little onigiri bite out of it. And that's great because you can pack that for lunch and it stays fresh for quite a while. And then you don't have to be the dreaded person that's microwaving leftover fish at the office. You can put leftover fish on a salad or in soup the next day. I think that, that's important to remember is to find ways to not waste the food as well.
Wow. Well, thank you. Is there anything else that you want to share about local catch or what you do in Alaska or anything else you want to share with our listeners?
I just want people to know that for small boat fisheries in the United States, when you're supporting wild caught fish, you are supporting families. You're supporting American working families directly. And I think that that is important, that we continue to be able to produce and eat such delicious seafood. So supporting that by buying it is one thing. And then also supporting it by, advocating for things that help keep our oceans and our coastlines clean. This is really important for wild seafood. We can't always control what's going on in the wider ocean, but we can definitely try and do the best we can and take care of our coastlines here in the US. And if we take care of those coastlines and those fish, I think that they'll keep coming back and taking care of us.
Hello, ma'am listeners. We just wanted to let you know that our episode with Kinsey Brown ended very abruptly due to internet issues. If you remember, she lives in rural Alaska, and so her internet went out unexpectedly and the episode just ended. You can find Kinsey Brown on Instagram at Iron and Pearls. You can also find her on TikTok at Seafood Sweetheart. And make sure to check out the organization that Kinsey and I talked about quite a bit, which is called Local Catch, and that is localcatch.org. don't forget to follow Corey on Instagram at For Nutrient's Sake. You can follow me at Nourish the Littles. You can follow our podcast at Modern Ancestral Mamas. And please don't forget to give us a 5-star rating if you feel called to. Leave us a review. We love reading your reviews. And hit the subscribe button on YouTube. You can watch all of our episodes now and see our faces and our reactions to all of our conversations. So that is the end of this episode. And thank you so much for listening.